Welcome, y'all. This is Tailgate Mayor Rusty Wallace, no relation, and I'm here with pregame engineer Andrew Sherwin. What's happening, Sherwin?
You! Get this thing going, baby.
I think he answered the question. What you drinking today, Sherwin?
Oh, man. I got New Holland Dragon's milk on the tap.
Woo, buddy. That's a stout beer there, not just in style.
Correct.
We're here. Well, we're not here together. We're trying our darndest to figure out this whole internet thing and talking over the internet here. We are here to do a podcast about racing and NASCAR. We are both huge fans of NASCAR, been fans for probably, 10, 12 years now. And, we've listened to a bunch of podcasts. We're both consumers of several podcasts. And, we kicked around the idea probably, 6 months ago to create some sort of podcast. And I think every time we had a couple beers in us, we got excited about it and then slept it off and woke up the next morning and nothing changed. So finally, Sherwin here had created a sort of 5-minute podcast and sort of kicked me in gear to start working on some of the more technical parts. And now here we are, hopefully, if everything's recording right. So who knows, this might be a throwaway, Sherwin, but we're here to talk about NASCAR as fans. And Sherwin, I think you gave a great intro in yours last time. So if you want to sort of repeat what you said before and sort of our mission here, what we're here to do.
Yeah, so one of the things that we noticed in the many podcasts that we've been consuming is that, the commentary is much better from the folks that have nobody to answer to. And while we have tremendous respect for Marty and McGee and the Redneck Rodeo, we kind of felt like they don't necessarily have the ability to attack NASCAR when NASCAR makes bad decisions. I think they do a great job and have tremendous honesty about their opinion of the positive sides of the sport. But maybe they leave a little bit to be desired on the negative sides of the sport. And so what we wanted to be was maybe a voice there, maybe a unique voice from a fan perspective on the things that we like and we dislike about NASCAR. And because we love the sport so much, we felt like, why not record it for nobody to listen to?
Yeah, that's right. So that you and I can listen to it in our cars later on. But who knows? Maybe somebody will like this, and maybe somebody will call in. As far as I'm concerned, this is a discussion. If you're listening to this now, we want to hear from you. My Twitter handle is Tailgate Mayor, spelled tailgate and then mayor. And Sherwin is pregame engineer. You want to spell that for the folks there?
Yeah, it's PREGAME, capital ENGNR. A little bit, not a perfect abbreviation, but it's worked so far.
Yeah, so just so everybody knows, I think you said it last time, we want this to be a widely consumable podcast. Therefore, we're keeping it PG despite our, normal banter. We're going to try our hardest to do that. We are biased. We have favorite drivers. You'll probably find out who that is not too long after we start talking about things. But we have favorite drivers. We have guys that we don't particularly like. We'll let you know when or exactly what we think and when we're thinking it. But I think both of us highly respect all of these guys and what they're doing. But we're not long to call people out on things that we see going on.
Yeah, I think in last week's podcast, what I said was that, because a filter is necessary to maintain a wide audience, that we would eliminate the fire trucks and the See You Next Tuesdays and stuff like that, and focus on the content being opinionated but constructive. So yeah, I think that's what our message is, that we want to be a voice of the people.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And, we are the people and you are the people, anybody listening to this. So please let us know if you have comments and everything. We're not going to drone on for 5 minutes every episode about this, but we wanted to kick it off here like this. So I think we can go ahead and start getting into our topics here. Today is the 21st of May, 2015. And we are coming up against the biggest race weekend of the year. So we've got 3 races going on this Memorial Day weekend. It's the F1 at Monaco, the Indy 500, of course, and the Coke 600. Now, we said earlier we're racing in NASCAR. I think we'll spend a couple minutes here, maybe a little bit of dialogue about the first 2 of those, and then get into the Coke 600 and what we think. I think, Sherwin, you and I both watched the qualifying efforts, so we'll get to those here shortly. But starting with the F1 race at Monaco. Now, I don't think either one of us are big watchers of F1 at all, and I haven't really been following. But any thoughts on that, Sherwin?
Well, I've tried to pay more attention to it when I can because it helps me be a better critique of the sport that I love, the auto sport that I love. And the things that I would say about Formula One is, Mercedes-Benz is running a commercial right now that says they won like 16 of the 18 races last year, which kind of proves it's not that competitive of a series. And the Monaco race that we watched on Diver, I don't know if it was last year or 2 years ago, that didn't have a single lead change. Like, what kind of racing series you got if you don't have a lead change?
Yeah, and we'll get to the Daytona 500 at some point in the history of this podcast, but it is strange to me that the premier race of the year for F1, I would say that's Monaco, or I don't know what else would be if it's not Monaco, just based on where it is and the prestige around that. But I liken it to Daytona 500 in that the most prestigious race as a fan is one of the more, to be blunt, one of the more boring races there. As you said, not only no lead changes, but the podium, the first, second, third place finishers last year were the exact first, second, and third place starters. So it's really a qualifying show, and the things that those guys do and those cars, it's unbelievable when you look at them on the track how big those cars are, and maybe that's one of the reasons we don't get much passing. But the amount that these guys have to drive on the edge and hit all their marks and everything is just unbelievable, and the talent that they have. But really, when it comes down to being a fan of the sport, it's tough to do. And 4 guys finished on the lead lap, by the way. So
right.
On a umpteen-mile track, just to show how little I know about it, but it's a long track and not a whole lot of changes there. So I'll be paying attention to it. I don't know if I'll watch the whole thing because I think it starts pretty early for us, but I will pay attention and catch the end, and maybe we'll see something new.
Yeah, I've been considering waking up early, behaving myself Saturday night, to try to catch it, all, 1,350 miles live. But the one I'm least looking forward to is the one I'm potentially going to wake up early for.
Yeah. So I don't know at this point. I know they were doing some qualifying earlier. I really don't know much about it. I know Lewis Hamilton, of course, drives a Mercedes. And as you've mentioned, they're the big dogs in that race. So yeah, we'll see.
I paid zero attention to the qualifying efforts.
Yeah. Looking on to later on in the day, we have the Indy 500. I think there's some pretty public news stories going on with the Indy 500. You want to catch us up, Sherwin?
Yeah, there's some pretty compelling safety issues that have come up, and it's not necessarily due with the facility, but to do with the racing package they have. There's been to my knowledge, at least 4 cars that have broken loose exiting turns or entering turns and have smashed into the wall and then caught air and either done a full somersault or been temporarily airborne.
Yeah, and that's obviously something that is, like I said, very sort of public facing. That's going to be on the headlines on ESPN and everywhere else in a series that otherwise doesn't get much attention, I would say, from the big networks like that. So, a couple things that I did see. I don't know if you Marty Smith had done an interview with Elio Castroneves. Have you heard that one yet?
Yeah, I listened to that podcast. I did.
Yeah, and then who was it that sort of wrote a public letter, and I can't remember who it was now, but one of the drivers saying that that there's no false pretense that this is a safe working environment, and that those guys know that going in, and these are the risks they take. So I find it interesting that the drivers themselves, at least in this pool of 2 people, both neither one really criticized this package, which I think is interesting considering the amount of criticism that drivers in the NASCAR series give to those sort of packages when safety is a concern, where these guys are saying, you know what, these are the cars, this is how they run, and we're running on the edge.
Yeah, well, I have a good feeling that whoever penned that note was probably named Tony Kanaan. He's been pretty open-mouthed about his opinion of risk-taking. And what it sounded a lot like to me is the stuff that I read about what happened in the 80s and 90s in NASCAR. You got to be tough. This is a dangerous sport, and blah, blah, blah. And, and maybe there's even some pressure being, as big a figure in the sport as Tony Kanaan is, from IndyCar to sort of push away to sort of gray area or shadow the safety issue. But the bottom line is, that Dan Weldon was a huge tragedy at Vegas. They made some changes. They don't go back to 1.5 miles now because it's very much like a plate race with cars that are not safe enough to plate race. But what they haven't done is address other safety issues, such as how fast they go and how flat-sided the bottom of the cars are and how easy it is for them to lift if they have any kind of air get up underneath them. And, sorry.
No, go ahead. Yep.
Yeah, so what I was going to finish with is this: it's asinine to say that drivers know what the risk is. They absolutely do not. It doesn't matter how bulletproof they think they are. None of them thinks they're going to die, and that's the reason why one of them will. And it's ridiculous that IndyCar isn't getting ahead of the game, because NASCAR was so behind the game, yet they were ahead. NASCAR was a sport that was killing, 1 or 2 or 3 guys a year for 40 years, and then they finally killed their hero. Mm-hmm. And it took that and their retired hero's grandson getting killed for them to go, you know what, we got to make some real changes, and we got to do it right now.
Yeah. And none of the fans want to be there for that. Even though you go to Daytona, you look over there in turn 4 and you say, golly, I can't believe I'm standing here where Dale Earnhardt went into the wall. But nobody wants to see that. Nobody wants to have that. And like we said before, as much as we might get on drivers every once in a while, Kyle Busch included, and we'll have him have a topic on him here soon. But when he breaks his leg hitting the wall that has no safer barrier, I mean, me and you are both disgusted, going, I can't believe there's no safer barrier over there. What are they doing here?
Absolutely. At this point in the game, as well as the safe wall is performed, there is no cost model you could show me that says it's not worth having every hittable wall covered with safer barrier. Pocono is the best example. They had no wall down that entire long stretch, the Long Pond stretch. It's 3,700 feet long. There was no wall near the track. So they went in, they put the softball in, and you know what? Nobody is ever going to die on that, the medium stretch, I guess it is, from turn 1 to turn 2 at Pocono because of that wall.
Yep. Exactly. So, it's a shame. That's what, that's the story coming out of Indy right now where, I'm excited to see who's gonna take the checkered and, get the milk bath there. But right now it'll be interesting to follow that and see if they're going to make any changes, especially these circle tracks going forward.
Yeah, well, one of the exciting things about the Indy this year is we have 2 guys that have a potential to tie the all-time greats with 4 wins.
Yeah, Elio and
Scott Dixon.
Scott Dixon, yeah.
It's pretty cool. There's only been 3 guys to do it, and I'll love the number. I know Foyt and Mears are on that list. I think Al Unser Sr. is the other guy.
Okay. So with that in the books, we've covered F1, we've covered Indy, probably with the correct amount of proportion of our knowledge here, and let's move on to this Coke 600. Hallelujah! Let's get there. So the qualifying just ended. We have Matt Kenseth on the pole. We're looking at what is it? There's it's like Toyota Ford, and then we start getting the Chevys. What's going on, man?
That's a great story because the last thing I did when I fully discovered what we talked about earlier via text with Casey that he didn't have a chance to call. I went live and it was like, yeah, like you said, it's Toyota Ford, and then Chevy.
Yeah.
So it's like those guys figured something out when it got cooler.
Yeah. And, and then you go back and look at practice speeds, and this has happened all year too, where, these guys just they're either running qualifying or they're running practice. And, I think Jimmy Johnson, who's starting way back because he didn't make the first cut. I say way back, 13th. And then Casey Kane, who is starting 33rd, they ran, I believe, 2nd and 3rd in practice.
Yeah, they did. And, that practice was between 2:30 and 4 o'clock, which is an odd time to practice for a race that starts at 7 and ends at midnight. But, I think if you look back, if I'm not mistaken, that Hendrick has actually kind of struggled to qualify for the 600, even when it was just 1 lap runs. So maybe that's my data's wrong on that, or maybe I'm just remembering last year, the first year of this weird qualifying that we do now. But I suspect that, come Sunday night about 8 o'clock, you're going to see 4 Hendrick drivers in the top 10.
Yeah, I'm with you there. You and I, and so the fans know, we're in a fantasy NASCAR league, and when you see something like Casey Kane, one of the rules is the differential in starting position and finishing position. And when you see somebody like Casey Kane starting 33rd, and then but in practice he's 2nd, that is a golden ticket for a lot of points. As long as he stays out of trouble back there in the back of the pack. I mean, I'm talking 25 laps. He's going to be up there with the with the regulars, and then fighting for positions after that.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to see they're going to be talking about the leader on lap 22 has lapped the slowest car, and then they're going to say, oh, and by the way, Casey Kane has picked up 18 spots.
Yep, exactly. So the Coke 600, switching gears a little bit, is the triumphant return of a guy's name who I've mentioned a couple times, Kyle Busch. Coming off the heels of the All-Star race, and then getting some good practice time in. You and I had a discussion about that, and I think you had some. I thought you had some really good points about that. As far as him coming back for that race, and then this weekend what he's doing, and then of course a storyline around the waiver that NASCAR has granted. So What are your thoughts, number one on I guess him coming back and what it is for him in the sport, and then, maybe some commentary on what you think about, the whole waiver situation.
Yeah, so in this time off, in this time of injury and recovery, I've been incredibly impressed with every interview that Kyle's given, and knowing that, he gets coached, okay, that's fine, but they're still going to say really what's on their mind, what they're thinking. They're going to convey a confidence based on how they really feel. And what Kyle Busch has conveyed is that, holy cow, okay, all right, knock me off my pedestal. I understand now that this isn't forever. I'm not Superman. I'm not invincible. Real things can happen to me that could take this thing that I love away. And I think that's going to fuel him. He raced well in the All-Star race. He was fast. He blistered the qualifying. I don't know if they ended up having a penalty or something, but he was fast. He was ridiculously fast, considering if you look at guys that had gotten his car, and you look at guys that have driven similar equipment that didn't have to take 3 months off, and they weren't faster than him. Like, that is amazing. So you couple that with, look at how much being a father has impacted drivers.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Yeah, I was going to say that that's a big addition. There is not only that injury, but becoming a father and seeing what not only, like you said, I may not be able to do this sport anymore, do what I love anymore, but hey, I could it could even be worse than that.
Absolutely. And you got Braxton Locke Busch being born last weekend, I believe, Sunday, or maybe it was Monday. Doesn't matter. And I believe that will change his life. Kevin Harvick, anybody? Kevin Harvick?
Yeah,
you pay attention to his Twitter. Keelan Harvick is adorable. I'm not a father. I don't really even aspire to be one. Keelan Harvick is adorable, and his dad is lightning fast since that kid came around.
Yeah, and I don't know what's going on. If maybe he's deflating his football a little bit or something, but he is absolutely tearing it up right now. I don't know where that speed's coming from, but to your point, I mean, there's that extra drive, that extra hunger. I think, and also to your point, I think we'll see Kyle Busch. I'm kind of hoping that we'll see something like that out of Kyle Busch, and not the reckless renegade that we had seen, in years prior, but more of a calculated. I would not call anything that Kevin Harvick has done in the last, or I should say this whole season plus the end of last season. I wouldn't call that reckless at all. He's just racing as hard as I've ever seen anybody race. It's really, really neat to watch that.
I agree. And I think we both had a discussion before about how Kevin Harvick, you can love him one day and he gets right up under your fingernails the next.
Yeah.
And that's a skill in a lot of ways, because that means you drive both ends of the spectrum. But, yeah, I mean, he's just – right now, he's not getting in anybody's way, and he's not moving anybody. He's not making a mess of anything. He's just fast as a cuss word.
That's our PG self-censorship. We're not sophisticated enough to have the beep yet, so we've got to figure it out on our own, but I like that. And so Kyle Busch coming back, we've discussed that, and then getting the waiver now, and we've seen a couple waivers now this year. I'll call it the family discount, if you will, on the waivers. For me, getting this waiver, I think is deserved and legit. This is one that, it's a mea culpa for NASCAR, saying, look, you're right. We need to be safer here. We need to – I think it's them and you only get glimpses of this every once in a while where NASCAR admits fault. And when they do, I pay attention for sure. And in this case, we have Kyle Busch coming back for, racing for a championship now. And I think in this case, it's well-deserved. I know you had said you'd gone back and forth on it a little bit. I say deserved, not like he worked for it, but that he deserves it due to the circumstances that came about him, being gone for a while. And I understand, the other driver who may not have raced or who had gotten all the races in. But I'm okay with this decision. How about you?
I'm okay with it. I've absolutely come to terms with it. Now it makes sense to me based on everything that I've read and heard and listened to other people talk some sense into me and talk some sense out of me. Really,
Yeah.
The reality is, as long as the top 30 rule is in place, Kyle Busch is going to have to average, based on NASCAR history, a 14 to 15 place finish, and he's going to have to win a race, now until the chase starts. And his historical performance is an 18th place finish.
Mm-hmm.
We know he can win races, but his consistency leaves. All
right, we're back. Our first pregame engineer, tailgate mayor, major technical issue there. So got that all figured out. Sherwin, I believe it. We cut you off right in the middle of a conversation there. I don't know if you wanted to close out the Kyle Busch conversation.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and close it out. I have no idea where we cut out. So that's unfortunate. I was jibber-jabbering on there for a while, but I expect Kyle to do really well now. He seems like he's got a clear head. He showed back up, and even though he's out of shape, he ran really fast. I mean, really fast at the All-Star race. I think there's a lot of sobering things about getting injured. There are a lot of sobering things about becoming a parent. And he's basically done both within a week. So,
yeah. That's a good perspective. A lot of change in a matter of 7 days. So let's move on a little bit. And, we watched the All-Star race. We watched Denny Hamlin, take that. And I thought it was interesting, the interview afterwards with Brad Keselowski talking about clean air and him saying he knew that and I think it was him getting caught speeding off a pit road, and he said, I knew that was my only chance because there was no way to beat him, off the restart. So I found that to be kind of disappointing, really, and it goes to this whole package that we've had for especially this year, but we talked about last year about the whole clean air issue. What are your thoughts there? What do we have to do?
Well, I think NASCAR, and this is where we talk about when NASCAR does things that piss us off. And NASCAR did the exact opposite of what the drivers asked for. NASCAR decided to lower horsepower and lower downforce. And drivers said to lower downforce and add horsepower, or lower downforce so significantly you wouldn't need to add horsepower. Because they want to be off the pedal. They want to be off the throttle in the corner because that allows them to choose a line that's working for their car's setup. The shocks, the springs, the tires. That's what they want. If you have to be on the gas all the time, there's typically only one or maybe 1.5 lines at a racetrack that are fast. So that's what Brad's talking about, especially when you have to follow a guy. You go into a corner and that guy's got 3,000 pounds of downforce. If you're behind him, you've got half of that or less. Mm-hmm. And if your setup is such that you need the downforce to turn, if you need, the right front force to be down so that tire will grip and you can turn, you can't do it. But if these cars are going in the corner, balls to the wall, and then have to lift because they're unstable in the corner, and you get to choose a line based on the way you set the car up, then you got 3, 4, maybe 5 wide races. In California, the only reason why it is as awesome as it is because of the tires.
Yeah. Well, and that track has about 12 lanes on it.
It is very wide. But the reason why they can run so many lines is you can set your car up to eat up tires on the bottom, or you can set them up to eat up tires on the top, or you can set them up to run the middle or split seams. I mean, you can set the car up any way you want, because depending on how you like to race, every one of those lines will work.
Yep. So, talking a little bit more about Charlotte here, you and I were in the good graces of the Charlotte community a year ago this weekend, and I would say we had a fantastic time. If you haven't been to Charlotte, it is really the premier. I would say all these baseball teams building new stadiums, and people want to go, and building the new football stadiums, and the Super Bowl goes there and everything. Really, Charlotte to me is among those. It's not the old and dirty. It's not the and I don't mean that in a bad way. It's not the old school style. This is the new school racing complex here, and I was really impressed with the facilities. I was really impressed with how they're even down to their roots. The dirt track there. We went to the dirt track racing. I think it was Friday night. And just had a blast, and a really cool place. And one of the coolest parts to me, and maybe the listeners have figured out at this point, as much as we've talked about Hendrick, that our favorite drivers sort of lie in that camp. But we did go visit the Hendrick complex, and I was in awe at what they're doing at that complex. So, Sherman, if you want to tell us a little bit about what to expect at the what I might call the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory of NASCAR.
Well, I was amazed, and let me let you know that my background at that time, I was working in a research engineering institute, so to speak, and you walk in there and the precision. I mean, you're inside what appears to be about a 40,000 square foot facility, and that's just the 5 and the 24 side. They've got a separate building, and the way they've got it set up, the cars are pristine. The floor you can eat off of. You see the trophies, you see the banners, you see these series of scales where they can walk the cars on, and they can change wedge and track bar and see how much that changes the weight from corner to corner. All that stuff just in the floor. It's built in the floor. They don't have to roll it on a ramp or a portable deal. It was amazing. It was absolutely, man, never seen anything like it. I didn't know what to expect. I went in with no expectations because I knew it would be better if I didn't. It was magnificent.
I think the minutia is really what got me, to have a clean car, I think, or to have a few clean cars. You'll see that at a lot of places, but down to the minutia. If you remember, we walked by this bank of bolts and nuts, and they were perfectly, it's not anything like my dad's garage where there's the one big bucket that has them all in there and you got to find it. It's labeled. Every one of them looks like it's been recently polished. I'm sure they're all brand new. But, on top of that, you walk outside, and I felt like every blade of grass had been grown in a lab somewhere individually and, placed here specifically for that day, and that they were going to rip it all up and start over again tomorrow and do the same thing just as perfect as everything was. And in addition to that, I was really impressed, or it pressed upon me. I shouldn't say I was impressed. I wasn't in awe or anything, but I sort of learned something when we saw the pit crew practice area, if you remember that. And they had, it was almost like an outdoor gym, if you will, but tailored toward all the different aspects of doing pit stops. And that was really cool to me to see that they had that specific area just to practice. I imagine guys out there, the pit crews out there 4 hours a day practicing on that. That was really neat to me.
Yeah, I think the thing that the casual fan doesn't probably ever get is visual to, or get to understand what these big teams are doing. Hendrick has a combine. Everybody's heard of the NFL combine. and it's called the Super Athletes in Pajamas Running and Jumping and Doing Fun Stuff to impress people that are going to pay them a bunch of money. Well, the guys that maybe don't quite make that pajama party, they come to the Hendrick pajama party, and they might get a job changing tires for $100,000 a year.
Yeah.
They do it. Hendrick has at all times has 2 squads that don't even pick cars that are pushing the guys that are picking cars. And it's an athlete's world, even at the pit stop level.
Yeah. So let's, what other topics do you have for us here, Mr. Sherwin?
Oh, I just wanted to be a homer and talk about Chase.
Yeah, go ahead. For we didn't do a whole lot of intros here, but of course both of us are from Atlanta. Both of us have followed old Awesome Bill, and of course with his son coming up, it's something that he's raced in the local tracks here all his life. And I know, Sherwin, you've gone and seen him at some of the local shindigs, and been following him through all the series and then through nationwide, and of course taking over next year for Jeff Gordon. So it's obvious that we should be followers at least, and if not fans of Chase.
Yeah, so Chase Elliott's going to make his 3rd start in the Napa 25 for Hendrick. For those that may be listening, for whatever reason I hadn't heard, he's going to be in the 24 car for Jeff Gordon next year. He's a 19-year-old driver from North Atlanta. I got to see him when he was 10 or 11 years old in a Bandolero at Atlanta Motor Speedway around the bull ring. It's a cool thing. It's something to be – if you're looking to get in the sport, he's a good driver to get in the sport with because he's going to do it right all the time. We don't know how much he's going to win because nobody ever does. But he's going to do it right. He's going to do it the right way. And, of course, Rusty and my favorite driver is Casey Kane. And at the last minute, they decided they were going to just pull together the garage resources and run this nationwide race. And I'm glad for it. They're running the 5 with Armor Food sponsorship. And so we'll see how it goes.
Excuse me. That's awesome. It gives you 2 reasons to be looking forward to the nationwide race and then for the Cup race. So with that said, what are your picks? Tell me a couple guys.
Well, I saw something absolutely absurd today while I was reading that. And so my number 1 pick for Sunday night is got to be Kevin Harvick.
Yeah.
It's been absolutely absurd. And for seconds and thirds, I would sling in there Joey Logano and Casey Kane.
Yeah. Yeah, those are great picks. There's no way that I wouldn't say Kevin Harvick for my pick. And it's funny because you look at this qualifying order and you see these names: Kenseth, Logano, Edwards, Biffle, Hamlin, Keselowski, Reagan, which, by the way, great qualifying run for Reagan.
Boy.
Yeah, right. So I just don't see Carl Edwards hanging up there the whole time. He's been doing that all year. Biffle, same thing. So, I got to go Kevin Harvick as well. I think Jimmy Johnson, we just talked about it. We're at the home of Hendrick. It's tough to look outside of Hendrick and say, those guys are going to be the ones running up front. This is the Hendrick's backyard. So, Jeff Gordon, I would love to see him, do something here at his I won't say his home track, but certainly, Hendrick's home track here. So I'm looking at them. I think Kurt Busch will be fast. I think Harvick, of course, will be fast.
Yeah, well, if we're looking at sentimentals, absolutely Jeff Gordon. Golly, Jeff Gordon. His first race win was the 600. If his last race win, or if he won the 600 in his last year, that would be the greatest tale of tales.
wouldn't it? So that's our picks. I've got nothing else for today, man. So let's wrap this thing up. It's our first official podcast in the books. And that might be pooping on you a little bit to say official, but with both of us sitting here, and like I said, it kind of took the motivation that you brought to the table with just making one and getting it out there and making it happen, and I guess a little bit of my computery background to get this podcast up. I'll tell y'all what, if anybody out there wants to start a podcast, Twitter me or something, because I will save you a lot of headaches on how to actually make that happen. Because boy, what a pain! I tell you what, and I'm good with computers, but that was a mess. But if you're listening to this, hopefully you got to it. We're on iTunes. We want to hear from you. Like we said at the very beginning of the show, not only hear from you on Twitter. Hey, if you're interested in being on the show, we've already got a few things set up. You can call in to us. We've got phone numbers you can call in. We'd love to hear from folks. We're planning on having a few guests as we go forward. We've already signed on a few folks. And, if you're thinking, oh, well, I might be able to tune into the Pregame Engineer Tailgate Mayor podcast and maybe Dale Jr. ought to be on there. Well, hold your horses, buddy. We're not there yet. Maybe one day. But we're actually really excited for the lineup and the interest that we have so far in some folks coming on. So be on the lookout for that. Absolutely. We've got Billy Higgins of 406 Intro fame, very much interested in coming on the show. And I've got some interest from Philip Jones, a friend I developed out of the Chapel Hill area, who's a NASCAR and IndyCar and also an international soccer fan. Maybe we can work some soccer in at some point. Yeah, that sounds like a plan. So, guys, I'm Tailgate Mayor, Rusty Wallace. Again, no relation, but find me at Tailgate Mayor on Twitter. And this is Andrew Sherwin. Sherwin, once again, that Twitter handle. Yeah, that Twitter handle is a little bit tough. It's at PREGAMEENGNR. All right. And if that's too confusing, just find me and we'll put it out there. We're going to try to get a Twitter handle set up for this podcast itself. And, hey, guys, we really appreciate you listening if you are. Thank y'all. See you next time. Bye.